I'm Brian DeVault, CTO of Netrio.
Mike Cromwell, partner and evangelist with Netrio. Regardless of whether it's a simple project that you're deploying or a super complex one, that there's some commonality and specifically 8 key tenets or components of a really good project management plan. So can you walk us through what those 8 are at a high level?
Absolutely. So step 1 is project initiation.
How would you summarize what you get done at that phase?
So in this phase, you're talking about establishing your overall goals and objectives, roles and responsibilities, the scope of the project, what the deliverables are, your initial project schedule, kind of a straw man or a cursory timeline, a financial analysis, and writing your project charter.
How long does that typically take?
2 to 4 days, depending on the complexity of the project. Some of these are boilerplate templates, and so they happen much quicker. In some cases, you can put this together in 2 to 3 hours. So the next step really starts to dig into the details of planning the project. So in that phase, you're going to do things like refine the scope that you defined under the original project initiation, because you're learning more as you go, right? You're going to go through your team selection. So you're going to actually replace a role that may say, project team member with somebody's name, right? And say, now we've got to the point where we understand who's going to be involved. We're defining our resource requirements. So who's involved and for how long, right? And maybe that's hours, maybe that's weeks. Depends on what the overall goals and objectives are. You're going to start to refine your costs as part of this, your financial analysis piece. You're going to do that kind of as you go. Establish that detailed schedule and your detailed timeline, because you really start putting tasks together with their dependencies and say this task starts next week and it's completed in 2 days, and immediately following that task we can start the next one. You start to introduce some risk planning because you're starting to understand more about the project and where the risks are introduced. And then finally you're implementing some QA or developing some QA and QC procedures. So the third step in this process is execution. So this is where the fun starts. This is where we start to actually put the rubber to the road, and we're actually beginning the project, and we're knocking down some of the tasks that we've outlined in step 1 and 2. So at this point, we're managing people. We're adhering to the overall project schedule that we've set out. We're coordinating resources. We're conducting those regular meetings, right? Those weekly or bi-weekly meetings where we bring everybody together and talk about all of these things, right? And then we're doing cursory task reviews. So what have we gotten done when, and how does it apply? So the fourth step is resource leveling and control. And keep in mind as we go through these, this is Netrio's application of project management methodology. This is not a rule book or a PMP, or this didn't come from any document like that. This is something we developed over the course of years, and what works well for us and will work well for many IT service organizations. So in the resource leveling and control aspect of this, you're measuring that ongoing activity. We're looking at performance to budget and performance to schedule, right? So how well are we sticking to what our original schedule was? And then we're adjusting, and shifting resourcing. That whole resource leveling and control, what is that? It's understand it, adjust, manage, and apply that to the overall model. So step 5, we're looking at the documentation, right? And the documentation aspect of any project, right? It's going to, it starts at the top, and again, these are tenets. These are not done in order or anything like that. So, but as we're talking through project plan, project status reports that are the outcome of those meetings, right? An important aspect of it. A lot of people will go conduct a project meeting and there's no project status report that comes out of it, or even just meeting notes. But you have to memorialize what was said and done and agreed to during those meetings inside some formal piece of communication. So as we move down the list, number 6, risk management, right? So this is where, we're putting that analytical hat on and we're going, okay, of all of these tasks that may be running slightly behind, what risk do they represent to the overall success of the project? And then how do I manage that? So does that mean that I am bringing in the resourcing and leveling portion of it? Am I going out and adjusting the plan accordingly? Do I say, I was on the 4-week side, now I need to go to the 6-week side and make sure I set expectations in week number 2 so that we're not, an overall disappointment in the delivery. The 7th important tenet is communications. Whether that's telephone, conference calls, emails, text messages, whatever you got to do to communicate the status of that project is what you want to do to make sure it's a success. And then number 8 is handoff to long-term support, right? So the goal of any of these projects, at least at Netrio, is to execute all of these items with the goal of at some point handing this project off into when it's in a supportable state to long-term support. So some of that comes in the form of documentation, right? We've got documentation that our task execution folks produced during this project plan, and with the goal of handing this off to long-term support to say, here's how you support this long-term. These here, we'll say items 4 through 7, are somewhat dynamic through the course.
You can almost draw arrows because this is where you set the foundation.
Right.
And then from here on out, it can be an iterative process, I
Correct.
assume.
If I realize, during my risk management assessment, which is, constantly applied throughout the course of the execution of the project, that I need to increase my timeline from 4 to 6 weeks, that's going to require some planning, right? Yeah, I included that step number 2 in there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. 4 through 7 are applied continuously through the process of managing the project and are critical to its overall success.